Hey there, this is Louis Lazarus of Impressive Webs, and you are watching my first official screencast. And today I will be discussing this topic here, why you shouldn't use the CSS font shorthand property. So this is a bit of a debatable point, I'm sure, but I've noticed that a lot of people agree with my view on this. I actually wrote an article about the CSS font shorthand property, so you can check that out on my website. But here I'll be discussing briefly some of the pros and cons and just showing you visually what happens when you try certain things with the font shorthand property. So first of all, I'm going to discuss the pros. Now I'll just show you the page setup I have here. I have here's what it looks like. It's just one line of text, and that's right here in the HTML. It's a paragraph contained by a div element, and the styles are as follows. I have 6 typographic styles declared in the container, and then the child paragraph element is declaring the exact same styles using font shorthand. So if I delete this line, it's exactly the same, except for that one little change, which should be like this. 100 pixel line height, which I forgot to include. Okay, so now it's exactly the same. So if I delete that line, there you see, so it's exactly the same. And you'll see why I'm declaring the same styles in a minute. So what are the good things about the font shorthand property? Well, the one good thing is, as you know, any shorthand property saves you lines of CSS. We have 6 lines here that are declared in one line here. So anytime we can save lines of HTML or CSS, we definitely want to do that. The other good thing about the CSS font shorthand property is something called inheriting system fonts. Here I'll show you how we do that. We can, using the font shorthand, I can go font menu, and then that tells my document to inherit the font, all the font styles associated with the menus in my operating system. So I refresh the page, and that's what it then looks like. I think that's pretty useless, so I don't think that's much of a bonus at all for using font shorthand, but just so you know, that's how you get the system fonts to be inherited into your document. And there's a little more information on that in the SitePoint CSS reference. We can see that here it lists all the values for inheriting system fonts. But again, I think it's pretty useless. So we're just going to revert our document back there, our CSS file, and now I'm going to discuss the cons, why I don't pretty much never use font shorthand. Basically, the reason I don't use it is because it's confusing for beginners and it's hard to maintain. And it doesn't react the same way, it doesn't respond the same way as we would expect with regards to CSS inheritance and the cascade. And I'll discuss in a minute exactly what I mean by that. First though, I'll just describe exactly what the shorthand property is. We have the 3 optional values declared first. Those are font weight, font style, and font variant. Then we have font size, and a slash, and line height, followed by line height, and then the font family. In order for font shorthand to work, you have to include font size and font family. So you could omit these 3 and the line height, and it would work. And you'll see that some things change there, and I'll explain why. That's one of the things I don't like about font shorthand. And another thing I don't like about font shorthand is that you have to declare some of it in a certain order, whereas others don't matter. And it's a little confusing to understand, especially for beginners. These 3 here don't matter. It doesn't matter what order you put them in. But they can't go at the end. You can't put font size first and then font weight, which is a little confusing. You know, why are these not ordered, but this one needs to go. It just doesn't make any sense to me why it's like that. Another thing is that it's not very easy to read. I guess we know that this is font weight, but a beginner's not going to be very familiar with whether this is font style or font variant or what it belongs to. So it's not the easiest thing to maintain. If you have to go in here and make a change, it's just not. It's not very clear what it is. Whereas this is so much nicer. You can just see exactly what's going on here, and deleting one isn't going to have any effect. And then, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the way that it inherits styles is just not normal. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by that. If I delete one of the optional values, I'll delete line height here, you would think that this paragraph would still inherit line height from here. But that's not the case. When I refresh the page, the line height has now changed. See, if I put the line height back in to 100 pixels, you can see the text jumps down because I have a bigger line height. I remove it, it changes. Why is it not 100 pixels? Well, because with font shorthand, instead of inheriting, it actually reverts back to the font property's initial state. So in order to be able to maintain a style sheet with font shorthand, you have to understand the difference between inheritance and initial state. So it's another reason I don't like to use it. It's not that I don't personally understand it. It's just a little more to think about. And if somebody has to maintain my style sheet later on, they're going to have trouble with it if they've never used font shorthand. So another reason I think it's not good to use it. And finally, this is a small thing, but I don't think text editors autocomplete that particular property very well. For example, if I was to go here and just remove that, see, if I try an autocomplete font property, it puts in something like that. It doesn't really give me the options I want, which are, the 6 that I'm looking for here. And of course, I'm also using an older version of Dreamweaver, so I don't know if Dreamweaver has updated that in the newer versions, but it just doesn't do anything here. And a beginner who's trying to fill in the font property is going to do this, and they're going to wonder when they refresh the page why their paragraph is still in Times New Roman when in fact they've declared Arial. So again, it's a confusing property, and I just don't think it's worth the time to save 3 to 5 lines of CSS. So that's it. That's my beef against the font shorthand property. If you have any reasons why you think it should be used, then feel free to comment. Otherwise, thanks for watching.